Hi there, I'm Angie Carpenter, Islip Town Supervisor, and want to welcome you to this edition of Supervisor Spotlight. We're here in the studios at Long Island MacArthur Airport, Long Island News Radio, and with us today in the studio, we are so delighted to have our New York State Senator and former Islip Town Supervisor, Tom Croci. Tom, welcome.
It's great to be with you, Supervisor.
Well, thank you, and it's good to have a good friend in the studio. We were talking about this off air, but tell us a little bit about making the transition from being an Islip Town supervisor to being a New York State senator in one of the most populous, important states in the country, really, I think.
It's being the supervisor of the third largest town in the state was an invaluable experience going up to Albany. We do have other members of the legislature who have been mayors and county executives, and that kind of experience really helps you understand what you're fighting for as far as resources to get them back to Long Island, to the towns. So it was probably the best training that you could have as a legislator in order to know what exactly, I know what your needs are, not only because we continue to talk, and I talk to the supervisor in Brookhaven, Ed Romaine, but because I've been in the seat and I know the budget constraints. I know all the services that you're able to provide the town. And so anything that we can do to advocate for more resources from the state level, I pretty much know those sensitivities because I sat in the chair. So amazing experience. I miss being the executive and being able to get a problem at 9 a.m. and fix it by 2 p.m. Legislature, there's a little more involved in talking. And of course, your days as county ledge, you remember that. But it's been quite an experience. I was told when I went up there, you're going to be able to advocate for your towns more than you could ever have helped them just sitting in the seat. And I really feel that we've been able to do that, and I hope the towns have seen that.
Well, I certainly, from my vantage point, as a supervisor of the town of Islip, and I'm sure that Ed in Brookhaven would agree, it is invaluable, and it is very comforting to me to know that when I call with an issue that you really totally understand. I don't have to explain why.
Right.
We need whatever the assistance is. It's instant. And, when you talk about how your experience as a town supervisor has been invaluable to you in your new role, I can relate to that because having served as a member of a legislative body for many, many years in the Suffolk County Legislature, and then functioning as the county's treasurer for 9 years and doing the whole financial administrative end of government, that has been invaluable to me. And as a supervisor, you're not just an executive, you're part of a legislative body, so there's that give and take of working with your colleagues. And but that experience, like you said, is absolutely invaluable.
Absolutely.
And Tom has been from the ready in the beginning of your tenure as the senator, was able to deliver a sizable grant to the town of Islip in $1 million to assist in our cleanup at Roberto Clemente Park. So, let me take this opportunity to thank you for that. Again, you understood the challenges we faced and, we're there at the ready to assist.
Absolutely. And whether it was Superstorm Sandy or the cleanup at the park, the goal is to come back better than we were previously, to have a facility that was better than before. And hopefully with that cleanup money, and I know all the hard work that you and the town are doing, they're going to have something to be proud of in Brentwood. And I think as far as what we did after Sandy, we're able to build back, Islip Beach better than ever, new facilities. So we try to take bad situations and make them better. And, as long as we're coordinating both at the state level down with our townships and our county, then we should be able to get this done. There's no one pot of money anymore anywhere in government that can get all this done. So we all have to work together. And I think between the county executive and the town supervisors and the state legislators, I think we really are a model of that in Suffolk County.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I'm so glad that you mentioned both Sandy, and the dilemma that we faced at Roberto Clemente, and the fact that you can take a bad situation and turn it around to be something good. And in spite of the devastation and everything that we went through with Sandy, and unfortunately some people are still struggling to get back into their homes, although they're not, all that many any longer, fortunately. But our facilities have been vastly improved. I know that it was a big commitment on your part to see Atlantique, a premium marina in the county, really, and it's right there. It's a town facility over on Fire Island. But that commitment that you made to rebuilding it, we were able to finally finish the final piece of it, being that beautiful playground that we were able to put in this year. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a glitch from your leaving and my arriving, but once everybody was on the same page, we realized a promise had been made, and I was going to make sure that promise that you made was a promise fulfilled. And this summer was really great over at Atlantique. We made a lot of improvements in the facilities for the boaters and the campers and the day trippers, and it's just something we're looking to build on in the future.
No, absolutely. I mean, part of my responsibility is not only to ensure that you have more money in the budget, in our CHIPS budget, that we send down to the towns so that you can do road repairs, not only to make sure that there's money in the budget for new bridges, because so many of our bridges on the island over the highways are falling apart, but to ensure that our parks and our other facilities that make living on the South Shore of Long Island so great, make sure that I'm giving the proper resources from the state level, because we already sent those tax dollars to Albany. They might as well come back to us to make sure that you and the supervisor in Brookhaven have those resources so we can maintain that quality of life that we love on the South Shore, and our parks and marinas are part of that.
Tom, it's funny when I hear you say, we send the tax dollars up to Albany and it's your responsibility, or you take it on as your responsibility to make sure we get it back. Part of my beginnings in involvement in government, when I was just a business owner trying to make a living and working with my community, I was very involved in the chamber and so forth. I was also involved in the Long Island Association, and one of the first advocacy efforts that I was engaged in at the time was with a group that they had labeled Clout, and it was to lobby to get our fair share of transportation funding back to Long Island. This was in the late 80s. So everything old is new again, and here we are, because I can remember at the time sitting around a table with some representatives of state government, and it was the Assembly Speaker at the time, who has since long gone from government, but saying, we want our fair share. We send much more money up to Albany than we get back. And I think we're at a time now where we're seeing finally the dedication of dollars to our infrastructure.
Absolutely.
The governor has been so very sensitive to that, and it can't be done by one branch of government. He's got to work with the legislative body, and I think we're seeing a unanimity of purpose there between the legislative and executive branch to finally deliver those dollars here to us.
We definitely are. And we saw in this year's budget the first 6-year capital plan for the Department of Transportation for roads and bridges, upstate, downstate, Hudson Valley. It really is, it's a great tool to have, not only to have the resources, but a 6-year plan so that we can start planning long-term about infrastructure improvements. So that was a big victory. To be able to get a 6-year plan and to fund it for 6 years is something that we're proud of. And listen, there's a lot more work to do. It's a very big state, as you said, but this is a nice start. We've done a lot of good pieces of legislation which are good to build on in the next coming years.
Just today, I heard about the announcement yesterday about Penn Station and the project there, and there have been so many huge endeavors on the part of the state of late, and Tappan Zee Bridge being one of them. And even though it may not directly be in the town of Islip, it affects our residents because they travel into the city.
Absolutely.
They travel upstate, and to see something like the Tappan Zee being, constructed is truly, truly amazing. We are going to take a little bit of a break, and we will be back for the next segment of Supervisor Spotlight with our special guest today, our New York State Senator Tom Croci. Welcome back to Supervisor Spotlight. I'm Angie Carpenter, and here in the studio today, we are so pleased to have our New York State Senator Tom Croci. Actually, we have two senators who represent us in the town of Islip, and I know you work really closely with Senator Boyle. And I think that working together amongst colleagues is so very important, and we in the town are reaping the benefits of that because the two of you are in sync, you're lockstep, and whenever anything goes on in the town, it's not a matter of, well, that's not my part of the Senate district. I mean, you two are in sync and working together, and it's great.
And that collegiality extends across the aisle in the
Yep.
Senate in Albany, because some of the major pieces of legislation that we've been able to get passed, like the zombie home legislation that the governor signed into law, that couldn't have been done without myself being a Long Island senator, and Senator Jeff Klein, who also has a huge suburban area that's been affected by the bankruptcies and foreclosures. So it's that kind of collegiality that, regardless of where you are in the state, we're able to come together and make things work. Not only Senator Boyle and I in the same conference, but across the aisle and across conferences and into the assembly. We're able to find common ground on things that are important to the suburbs. That New York City is very different, and
gosh, yes.
The suburban senators, upstate, downstate, and across party have to stick together. And so far, we've been able to do that and get some good legislation with what the governor has signed with his partnership.
And we are so grateful for that leadership that you both exhibit there for us on our behalf up in Albany, because it is important. We want to maintain that suburban quality of life.
Absolutely.
We don't want to be New York City, but certainly we want the amenities and the conveniences and everything else. But when it comes to the reason that people settled on Long Island, it was for that suburban lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And we want to keep it. We mentioned Senator Boyle, and I know that right now he's working on some issues that I know that you've been very supportive of, and that is ethics reform.
Right.
And we in the town just recently passed some ethics legislation that I was really very, very pleased for. So I thank the two of you for your leadership, because, it set the bar. I know when I first came to the town, one of the first things I did was meet with the chairman of our ethics board and ask that they review our ethics code and our procedures, and making sure that they were all in sync. And they came up with a few things that, even though we were doing it, wasn't necessarily mirrored in our ethics code. So we just went through that whole exercise. And, unfortunately, as happens, and I'm sure you see it up in Albany, sometimes people use that opportunity for a political agenda and are a little disingenuous and are not exactly telling things as they are. But, we had a situation where some employees thought that their careers were in jeopardy because we were including a nepotism resolution in our ethics code that had been in our procedures manual. And it's something that is done in everyday business, where relatives don't supervise relatives and so forth. So I'm very glad that we were able to clear that up. And I thank you, because I know you're involved in ethics reform up in Albany.
We were, first off, the security is the government's number one priority. The second thing is the legitimacy of the government. And so individuals who elect us, who send us to do their work, have to know that they're sending good people up there, and that we're doing what they ask, and that we're behaving properly. We were able to, and I carried the resolution in the Senate, we were able to get a concurrent resolution, which we will use, if we pass it again, to change the Constitution to strip individuals, members of the legislature, and high-ranking government officials statewide of their public pensions if they're convicted of crimes. I think that's what the public had been asking for. We were able to do it. It's, I think, a strong message to individuals who are in government at whatever level you're in, that the public wants to know that the integrity of our institutions are intact, and that means that the people serving those institutions have to comply with the ethical standards that the voters, the residents of New York expect. So it was a heavy lift in both the Senate and the Assembly, but we were able to get a concurrent resolution that both houses agreed to, and with additional passage it will be going to the Constitution, and we will proceed with a constitutional amendment to strip pensions from electeds who are convicted of corruption.
Well, again, I want to thank you and Senator Boyle and all of your colleagues that supported that. And you're absolutely right. People, they want that. They want that in their government officials and their representatives. And, I've said this so many times, when you're elected to represent people, when they trust you enough to say, you know what, I'm going to pull that lever, I'm going to put my mark on that paper for you because I trust you to represent me, to make decisions on my behalf.
Absolutely.
That is huge. Yeah, that is such an honor, but it's also a real responsibility. And absolutely. When you stop taking that seriously, shame on you, really. And, I know that it's hard sometimes when people get into government. They tend to lose sight of it. A lot of times people are, telling you you're doing a great job, and you start, almost believing something, that you're invincible or whatever it is. But you have to stay grounded, and you have to remember why you got into this business. And
I have no trouble getting honest feedback, both, when you go to somebody's front doorstep, but also in the morning at the deli when you get your coffee. People are we're New Yorkers. We're brutally honest with each other.
Absolutely.
And they tell you, hey, you're doing a good job. Or, hey, I really would like to see this. So as long as you're living here, and in our case, we have a part-time legislature, which means we're back on the island in the summertime after session's over. It's really easy if you want to stay in touch with the people who you work for, the voters.
Absolutely.
Then you can stay in touch and you can figure out pretty easily what they want to see as far as legislation.
But you have to have that mindset.
And you have to like people.
And you have to be willing to, and
right.
you have to be willing to listen.
Right.
And you have to like people.
Yes.
And it is such a people's business,
There are a lot of people in government who serve in different capacities who don't have that desire to get into somebody else's problem and fix it. And that's what you have to be willing to do, certainly as a supervisor, because you get problems every day, calling into town hall for some problem. You really have to be interested in what's going on and want to fix it. And that's, if I were to say, what is the number one qualification for public servant, particularly as you get to the state level, that should be it. You really want to understand somebody's problem, internalize it, and fix it.
And I guess the wanting to do that. Yeah. And I've seen it in you, and, I still have it and plan on using it. One of the most incredibly satisfying things is to be able to have someone, like you said earlier, an issue comes to you in the beginning of the day and you're able to resolve it by the end of the day. And it doesn't always happen. It doesn't, you can't always make it better. There are times that I wish I had a magic wand, because nothing is more frustrating than having someone come to you with a problem and you can't fix it.
Right.
Some of them are heart-wrenching.
Yeah, we internalize that.
Yep.
In public service, absolutely.
And when I was in the treasurer's office, that was tough for me. I was there 9 years, and it was really, really tough for me because I'd been a legislator and used to dealing with people's issues and complaints. But at the treasurer's office, the 99% of the calls that I got was, I paid my taxes late, and now I'm getting charged interest and penalties. You've got to do something about it. It's not fair, and I never did it before. And the really compelling arguments that people had, and really heart-wrenching stories sometimes. And I had to say no. I couldn't ever fix that. Yeah. I couldn't make it better for them. That was tough. That was really, really tough. So, but coming to the town, as you know, is totally, totally different. So, we're going to stay focused. I know you are, and I am too, in trying to make things better for people. That's what government is supposed to be. We're not supposed to get in the way. We're not supposed to make it tougher, but try to make it better and engage people in the process to make government work for them.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
And you mentioned taxes. That's something we can get to in the next segment. But
well, let's do that.
So much of the tax bill comes from our education portion of our tax bill and our school tax. And we were able this year, with a lot of cooperation in Albany, to change the school aid formula and actually help districts this year reduce their property taxes.
And that is so important because that is the largest portion of the tax bill. And we will get back to that in our next segment. Thank you for watching and listening, and we'll be back in a few moments. Hi there, it's Angie Carpenter back in the studio with our New York State Senator Tom Croci and
back.
Supervisor Spotlight. And we left you hanging, I know, because Tom spoke that T word, the taxes. And I know that you've been working hard in Albany to try to drive more state aid, back to us here on the island, in particular in the town of Islip and the town of Brookhaven. These are tough times. It's not easy. We're in the throes of the budget process now, and we're looking at the budgets so very carefully. I'm talking line by line by line, literally sitting hours with the controller, going through the budget and seeing where we could cut without, negatively impacting the services that the residents have come to expect and, quite frankly, deserve.
Absolutely.
But the town portion of the tax bill right now in the town of Islip is the lowest across the county. It's 4.73%, and the vast majority is the school taxes, and we have no control over that. And yet when a person writes out their tax bill, it's made out to the town of Islip. So the perception is that I control, the portion of the taxes.
Not the case. Not the case at all.
So, that portion of it is tough. But talk about what you guys were able to do as far as state aid is concerned.
Well, one of the things that happened when the Senate went into the hands of the Democratic Party was we got payroll taxes, and we got MTA payroll tax, commuter taxes, and we got something called the GEA, the Gap Elimination Adjustment. And what that did is it siphoned resources away from suburban school districts to the tune of millions and millions of dollars for each district in our county, certainly in the 3rd Senate District. In the last 2 years, we were able to fully eliminate the GEA, which means the districts have been made whole again with regard to that specific program. And in many cases, as we discussed, since the pressure was on school boards to make that up in property taxes, we've opened up a release valve and taken some of that pressure off of our local school districts. So just to give you an example, in Sayville schools, this year they are lowering property taxes for the first time in memory, not only for homeowners, but for businesses, 4% for businesses. So they're able to take the money that we're bringing back, and we're trying to rebalance that formula so more state aid comes to our schools. Listen, we want to deliver the best quality education that we can, but we don't want to break the bank and force families and seniors to leave Long Island. So this is a way from state government, and we've done it in the last few years, of rebalancing that formula, taking the pressure off the local school boards, and ensuring that people can actually look at their tax bill and see reduced property taxes coming from their school district, which again is the biggest part of our tax bill. So we're really proud that we're able to do that. We have to continue that work in Albany to make sure we continue to adequately fund our education, particularly in the suburban, upstate, and Long Island districts. And as long as you have a Senate majority, and I'm part of that, we're going to fight for it.
Well, that is so critically important, because as we are sitting there now trying to put the final touches on the budget that gets submitted to the town board in the next couple of days, there's an awful lot of pressure. And knowing that there is the ability for the local school districts to have a tax decrease, that is huge.
For some districts, it's possible. Others, they're able to keep a steady tax rate and not the huge spikes in tax that we saw from the schools, say 10 years ago, which was multiple double-digit percentages. So between the tax cap and the increase in aid, I think you're going to see not only that the programs have returned, teachers have returned, extracurricular has returned, but you're seeing a stabilization of the school tax rate.
Well, that's important because, again, on the tax bill, the town portion is going to be a couple of $100s.
Right.
The school district portion is thousands of dollars.
Right.
So when there is a percentage increase and or decrease, it is meaningful. It shows. It means something. I mean, you could have a double-digit tax increase on the town portion and, have it be $50 or $60 for the year. But you have a double-digit on the school side, and you're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times I get, a little upset sometimes when you read or the reports of a budget and they'll talk about a percentage increase. And they'll say, oh, they raised taxes, 10% or 5% or 20%. And yet when you read further into the article, the headline is like really bruising. Mm-hmm. And then you read it and you say, well, wait a minute, that, was $30 for the year or $40 for the year. It's not necessarily, telling it like it is, so to speak.
No, I mean, if you talk to seniors, if you talk to young people who are trying to live here, who want to buy a single-family house, and who are looking at other places in other states, they always come back to the same things. We need a good job,
yep.
And we want our taxes to be reasonable. We pay higher taxes in New York State than almost anywhere in the country. We have policies in Albany. Some work, and a lot of them haven't. And we're seeing a lot of exodus of not only our young talent, but seniors who can't afford to stay there, and they've raised their kids here, but they can't stay here with their grandkids. So our job in Albany is to continue to be a release valve, not add additional pressures to the local governments or school districts, but to be a relief valve. Mandate relief, taking the burden off of you, taking the burden off of school districts, and trying to deliver that kind of education and those kinds of dollars. That's why we're there.
When you talk about mandate relief, that certainly is, something we keep chanting about for years and years from back when I was in the legislature. And I don't know how practical it would be to do, but it certainly seems like an idea worth pursuing. And that is when a senior's been in their home, especially if they're in a community for many, many years, and their kids have gone through the school system and so forth, and it may be 10, 20, 30, 40 years since they've had kids in school, yet they're still paying school taxes to the full amount. That perhaps there could be a freeze, say when a person reaches the age of 70, 75, that their taxes are frozen or at a very de minimis increasing amount going forward. I think that might give some sort of sense of relief. Also, too, when we talk about taxes, I think we have to be grateful for the fact that to this day, taxes, income taxes, property taxes in particular, are tax deductible when you're filling out
That's right.
your income tax returns, and hopefully that never changes. And I think that that's probably the only reason that keeps people in place. If the federal government were to ever look at changing that, I mean, that would be totally, totally devastating.
Absolutely. Well, we're able to, because there's so much pressure on our senior population who want to stay in their homes, we're able to expand the STAR tax rebate program. So that's a good thing for seniors who want to stay there. We've been able to expand that program in the state of New York. We've got a $4 billion tax cut, personal income tax cut, which will start being implemented in the next few years. It's the first time in our history we're able to do that. But you need to match that with companies coming into New York State, wanting to be here, knowing the state is a good partner in government, like the towns are with our businesses. The state has to match what you're doing at the local level and what the IDAs are doing. Encourage businesses to come in, let them know that they have a partner in government, and then get out of the way and let them create jobs and expand. That's something that still needs to be done in Albany, and I guarantee you that the Long Island members of the Senate delegation are assertive about pushing that agenda up in Albany.
Well, you're very right in saying that, because it just can't be, sending more money, more tax dollars, or more state aid down to the municipalities, driving it down here. It's got to be growing the revenue base. And the only way you're going to do it is to truly, truly be a business-friendly state.
Got to expand the economy.
And we're moving in that direction. And certainly we have at the town. I know in your tenure, it happened, and I've picked up the mantle. We've done a really good job with economic development, with our IDA. The numbers of jobs that have increased have been really wonderful. And jobs have increased, but time is running out. So we are going to have to wrap up. And I can't thank you enough, Tom, for coming in and sharing some some of what's happening in Albany. And thank you really for your service, not only in the legislature, but to our country when you served in the Navy. So, and you still do. So we thank you.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Good to be back.
Thank you. And thank you for watching.